What is up, YouTube? And today I want to talk about a specific boss in Etheria Restart that I definitely think needs a nerf very soon, just because of how frustrating and how much RNG especially is in this fight. And it's going to be Rengokutsu. Now, I think for thresholds in general, just talking about thresholds very quickly, I think, a lot of this is just stat checks. There's not a lot of RNG except for like Doki Doki, which can be very annoying sometimes. But as long as you have good gear from like Hell 3, Hell 4, and some good shells from some Inferno Grim Pursuit bosses that you farm, you're in a good spot. And for the shell bosses, I think, as long as you have good team compositions, because they're 4-man bosses, and as long as you have like decently leveled modules and shells as well, you're going to be pretty simple for the most part, with the exception of maybe like Sharon, because it's pretty difficult without Lily or Doki Doki, to be honest, but it's still doable as free-to-play, with free-to-play characters. But if we go to Rengokutsu here, this boss is going to be pretty much impossible for players that don't have, very specific characters. And the reason why this boss is so annoying is because it basically forces you to use different affinities, because you'll see his passive here, right? Basically, if you use characters of the same affinity, you'll stack your Evil Fire and get countered more often, because after members of the same affinity or element act 4 times, so if I have a Yelly and Valerian, if they both act 2 times, he will counterattack and then do a ton of damage to both of those characters, and also apply this stacking damage increase debuff. So it makes it so that you're not going to really ever run double affinities. The only times you really do will be in like one-shot comps where you're clearing very fast with Yelly and Valerian, or even Diting with Lily. But the thing is, these comps, they don't really play to take a lot of damage, right? You're just basically playing to one-shot the boss, but you're not going to really get anything above a 50% win rate with that team for the most part, because it's very RNG heavy, which we'll talk about in a second. So basically, you're forced to not stack certain affinities, you're forced into very specific team comps, so it makes it harder to build for, which makes this boss already pretty shitty enough to make a team for. But on top of that, there's also going to be a ton of RNG. So basically, the boss starts at a certain affinity here. He's going to be either one of the 5, and then rotate in a set order. So there's not RNG in what he changes to, it's a set order, but the starting element is random, and that makes it so that you can get taken off guard, because even though the starting affinity doesn't matter as much, once he switches like twice or 3 times when the fight starts getting very hard, when this starts stacking up, if you get the wrong affinity, he can one-shot one of your DPS, which is super frustrating. And you might be thinking, oh, there's no way this passive just one-shots, right? It's not really the passive that's a scary thing. This is a scary part, but it's the fact that he can counter you right before he acts, and then he can activate his AoE ability, which will then hit again and do a ton of damage. So, I'm not really a fan of that. You can get hit twice back to back and just pretty much get one shot. Even if you're on Bloodbath set, which you're going to see, like for example, my Yelly here is on Bloodbath when I farm Rengo, right? Because I need her to live. And even if she gets hit a back to back on this, she can still die, which is pretty crazy, right? Even at like 3 or 4 stacks, if she gets hit by like this Ardent Blaze, and then he like uses this Blaze Whirl right after, and I don't get any healing or shielding, she will pretty much just die, especially if she gets hit by like ads. So this boss, is super annoying, because he can do that. He also can steal turn meter from people that he counters, so it's just very frustrating to deal with, which makes this boss just a complete pain in the ass to deal with. Also, to make matters worse, he has 2 minions that he starts with at the start of battle. So how I was talking about like these one-shot comps, why doesn't everyone just run these like class comps with Lily and Valerian? The thing is, the ads that you fight against, they can silence randomly, which makes it so that even if you don't get silenced on the first turn, which you need like 300 speed on your cost to do, on the following turn, he can still silence you. So you're going to notice, a lot of the times, if your Lily or your Yelly gets silenced on the second turn, you pretty much just lose. And the reason why is because Lily then cannot S3, or Yelly cannot, S3 after Lily S3s again for the second time, and the run is pretty much going to be bricked for the most part. So, ton of RNG. They can also defense down you. So if you get defense downed and then this Ardent Blaze hits you, and then, or maybe his AoE hits you, you can just randomly die as well. So there's just a ton of RNG in this fight that makes this boss just very unfun to do. You're gonna see that pretty much, like for my team, for example, which is like 80-90% win rate, like 85% win rate, honestly. it's gonna be a team that's mostly gonna be on Bloodbath. So you can see my Yelly's on Bloodbath, my Doki Doki's on Bloodbath, my Viper's on Bloodbath, my Fushu's not on Bloodbath, but she's at 53,000 health, which is pretty much the same as being on Bloodbath. So it's just very frustrating because you have to build DPS on Bloodbath if you want a consistent team, and that makes it so that you need to farm damaged Bloodbath pieces, which is very annoying. And also on top of that, you just have to have specific units like I mentioned. Now there's a way you don't have to do this if you want a stable team. You can also run something like a Lily Vice team, which will need your Vice on Bloodbath as well. So basically you still need Bloodbath. You can also run Bruiser teams that people run with like Holden and like Rahu and stuff like that. But the thing is with those Bruiser comps, the runs take like 6 to 7 minutes and you need pretty much like full lattice investment into your characters. Otherwise it takes forever. So there's a lot of different team comps people are running, but they all come down to the same thing. If you want a consistent team, you need to run it very slow with like Bruiser teams, or you have to run it a little bit quicker with a little bit more risk with like your DPS either on Bloodbath or something using like a green Sonya to cheese and stuff like that, which makes the runs just super unfun. Now there are more team comps lately, and I think that's why the devs are less likely to nerf the boss. As you can see, like some people, like I mentioned, are Vice Bloodbath cheesing it, but the runs just take forever and the runs are never consistent because one bad RNG and you just get owned and your run just falls apart. So I think this boss definitely needs a change. I think the biggest mistake they did when designing this boss is with this Ardent Blaze and Blaze Whirl. I think with what Shadow Flame Hoyan does, right? You know how when he gets 7 stacks, he takes his turn and then immediately will use his ultimate right after? I think that's what should have been the case with Rengokutsu. I think what should have been the case with Rengokutsu is that when 4 characters of the same affinity acts, instead of just counterattacking with Ardent Blaze, I feel like he should have just cycled to 100% turn meter, used his Ardent Blaze, and then go back to 0%. I think that would have made the boss a lot more balanced, because right now with the state of how the boss is, just with unlucky turn cycling, if you proc the Ardent Blaze and then you get hit by the Blaze Roll right after, because he can literally Ardent Blaze you at like 90% turn meter and then Blaze Roll you, you can just get one shot. Even through Bloodbath, even on tanky characters, you can get one shot if the fight goes long enough. So it just makes for like a very unfun boss fight. There's not a lot of planning you can do about it. You're just pretty much praying that your team doesn't die, whether it be you're running a Bruiser comp or you're running a one-shot comp or something like that. I think for the most part that almost everyone can agree with me saying that this boss is just annoying. Even if they don't nerf it attack wise or HP wise, which I definitely think they should nerf like the damage on like some of these abilities, or even like lower the evil fire damage stacks of it. I think they should definitely try to remove the RNG aspects somehow, because it's just really hard to get a high win rate on this, not because of the boss's difficulty, but because of the RNG, which actually does boost the difficulty, because you have to kind of just gamble and pray you don't get screwed over by RNG. So hopefully this boss does see some fixes. I think if there's something that needs to be nerfed in this game, I don't think like thresholds necessarily need to be nerfed in terms of difficulty. I don't really think any of the shell bosses really do either, except maybe like Sharon for other players that don't have like Lily, Doki Doki, and other characters, because there's not a lot of team comps that you can run without those two that are consistent rather. But I think Rengokutsu definitely needs a nerf, because no matter what you run, there's pretty much like no 100% consistent team comps right now, just because of how much RNG there is. And it's just pretty sad that a good win rate in this in this boss fight is like 60%. People consider that very good, which is insane to me. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about this. Do you guys think this boss needs a nerf? And because the answer is yes, let me know in the comments what you think should be changed on this boss to make it more balanced. Nothing too crazy that'll make it super easy, but something that sounds fair, so it's still challenging, because challenging bosses are always still fun, but something that makes it less RNG reliant, a little bit more manageable. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.